Good morning, everyone. Pastor Jim Cymbala here. How are you? It's July 3rd, Monday. Tomorrow is, somehow I figured this out, the 4th of July, after the 3rd. And you know that's a national holiday known for what? All kinds of celebrations, but using, I gotta call them, not firecrackers, let's call them low-grade explosives. When I was growing up, I want to tell you old war stories, but when I was growing up, you know, people had firecrackers. You know, Johnny down the block would get, 100 firecrackers, and we'd all get them some and light them and then run from them and throw them and whatever, and forget that. Now they have things that can take off your hand. Now they have low-grade mortar shells, it seems. So I say all of that to say this: be careful. Wherever you are, whoever you are, especially if children are around, we had cherry bombs back then, None of you remember that. That's all before your time. Cherry bombs. Now, take out the word cherry. They just have bombs, and they're going off. And yeah, the display they do here in Manhattan, my wife and I, we watch it if we're in town and we see all the fireworks go off. It's impressive. But those are carefully watched. But every single 4th of July, on the 5th, there's mom and dad crying and kids maimed. So be careful. We're reading about in 1 Samuel when the prophet Samuel goes to Saul. Samuel had told Saul, the king, do not go into battle and do not sacrifice the sacrifice to God until I get there. But Saul, Saul needs some reins on him because he just went ahead, did something only the priest could do. And now Samuel comes a half hour afterward and says, you know what? What have you done? Now he goes on and has told him, God has set you against the Amalekites, who are the enemies of God. Always in the Old Testament. Many think they're a type of the flesh that fights against the spirit. And you got to exterminate everything. Saul wins the battle, but he doesn't do what God said. He keeps the king and the best cattle and people with money and influence. He keeps all the VIPs alive. So now in chapter 15, verse 12, let's pick it up there. Early in the morning, Samuel got up and went to meet Saul, but he was told, Saul has gone to Carmel. There he has set up a monument in his own honor. Yeah, that's Saul. And has turned and gone on down to Gilgal. When Samuel reached him, Saul said, the Lord bless you, I have carried out the Lord's instructions. Lie. But Samuel said, what then is this bleating of sheep in my ears? What is this lowing of cattle that I hear? Saul answered, the soldiers brought them from the Amalekites. They spared the best of the sheep and cattle to sacrifice to the Lord your God, but we just totally destroyed the rest. Enough, Samuel said to Saul. Let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night. Before we even get to that prophetic message, see what Saul is doing. When you read the Bible, you read it like we're doing. This is called exposition. You're reading it verse by verse, chapter by chapter. Another way to study the Bible, and there's books that will help you, is character studies, biographies in the Bible, the life of David, life of Elijah, the life of Moses. And you focus in, what are the verses that just about them that we know? What are the lessons we get? How did they please God? How did they fail God? What were their strong points that we can learn from? And if you do a character study of Saul, it's really sad and depressing. He's never mentioned in Hebrews 11 when all the heroes of the faith from the Old Testament are mentioned. Seemingly he was cast away. He ends up his life not seeking God, consulting a brujita, a witch, for direction, because God's not talking to him anymore. And here's an example of it. Two things. He's slippery. He's slippery. He doesn't own up. Samuel comes and says, what have you done? God told you to destroy everything, people and cattle and everything. He didn't do that. You think he would own up and say, my bad? No. He's like a lot of us. Well, listen, the troops saw the king and he had on this outfit. Listen, this outfit, you know what that outfit goes for? At Barney's, you know what it goes for? A lot of money. And the best cattle. See, we kept them to sacrifice to God. Then he brings in the element, almost, the soldiers made me do it. See, he won't own up. He's the king. He didn't enforce what God said. But instead of admitting that, his disobedience, he's dancing. He's floating like a butterfly around with Samuel. And Samuel's saying, why didn't you obey God? That's the way it is with us. I know I have failed God that way. God has made something real to me from his word, or God led me to do something, I think, by his spirit, and I disobey. I disobey. The secret is to own up. God is full of mercy. He'll forgive us. But when we dance with it and say, well, there's mitigating reasons. You don't know how I was raised. Now we want to go back 50 years. My dad was an alcoholic. I grew up in the hood. Whatever. Instead of just saying, Lord have mercy. Now he's going to lose everything. Kingship and his life. God's going to find a man after his own heart. So what's the lesson for us today? Let's not be like Saul, who offers partial obedience. Come on. Let's go all the way. Total obedience to God. It's amazing what God will do for us and through us when he sees that we have a heart to fully obey him. Total surrender to the Lord. Come on. When we do that, life doesn't get like, no, what a dull, boring life that will be, just always obeying God. No, that's joy unspeakable, full of glory. Let's obey him today as he leads us and directs us by his word and by his Holy Spirit. God bless you. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.